Let me start by asking, have you ever let someone's words or actions ruin your entire day? We all have. It's human. But what if I told you that it's possible, truly possible, to live in a way where nobody, no matter what they do or say, can shake your peace? Anger is often our reaction to feeling disrespected, unheard, or hurt. But here's the truth: anger is not caused by them. It's caused by what we believe about them. The power to never get angry or bothered by anyone lies in mastering our own reactions, not controlling others. One of the most liberating realizations you can ever have is this: people's behavior is more about them than it is about you. When someone speaks harshly, criticizes you unfairly, or lashes out for no clear reason, your first instinct might be to feel attacked. You might ask, "What did I do wrong?" Or think, "Why are they treating me like this?" But often, the answer has nothing to do with you. People carry emotional wounds, past traumas, unresolved stress, and frustrations that they don't always know how to process. So what happens? They project. They deflect. They unload. And whoever happens to be around, maybe you, becomes the target. It helps to imagine that every person is carrying an invisible backpack filled with their experiences, pressures, and pain. Some have been carrying heavy loads their whole lives. When that weight gets too heavy, it spills over in the form of anger, impatience, rudeness, or judgment. But it's not your weight. It was already there before you arrived. Think about it. When someone cuts you off in traffic or snaps at you at work, it's easy to assume they're just being a jerk. But what if they just had a terrible morning? What if they're dealing with anxiety, grief, or pressure you'll never see? That doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it does explain it. And more importantly, it allows you to release the need to take it personally. When you stop internalizing every comment, every tone, every cold look, you take a giant step toward emotional freedom. You start to see that their reaction is often a reflection of their inner world, not your worth or your actions. You begin to separate who you are from how they're acting. This perspective shift is powerful. It takes you from being reactive to being grounded. Instead of thinking, "Why are they treating me this way?" you start thinking, "What must they be going through to act this way?" That single question opens the door to compassion and shuts the door on unnecessary anger. It doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you protect your peace by not absorbing energy that doesn't belong to you. Because once you understand that everyone is fighting battles you can't see, you stop making their pain your problem. At the root of most anger and frustration lies a simple truth: we expected something different. We expected someone to treat us a certain way. We expected a friend to support us. We expected a partner to understand without explanation. And when they didn't, we felt hurt, disrespected, or even betrayed. But here's the thing: expectations are premeditated resentments. When you place rigid expectations on others, how they should talk, behave, respond, or show up, you set yourself up to be let down. People are not mind readers. They are not designed to move according to the script you've written in your head. Think about it. How often do we get upset not because someone did something objectively wrong, but because they didn't do what we wanted or how we imagined? You text someone and they don't reply quickly. You feel ignored. You open up to someone and they don't react the way you hoped. You feel dismissed. You do something kind and they don't say thank you. You feel unappreciated. But none of those reactions are facts. They're feelings based on expectations you had. And more often than not, those expectations were unspoken, unagreed upon, and entirely internal. Now, this doesn't mean you stop hoping for good things or give up on standards. It means you stop assuming that your way is the only way things should happen. You begin to understand that people are individuals with their own pace, personality, and priorities, and they won't always align with yours. When you learn to let go of expectations, especially unrealistic or unexpressed ones, you gain a powerful sense of peace. You become more open to accepting people as they are, not as you wish them to be. You stop writing silent contracts in your head and blaming others for not signing them. This shift creates more authentic relationships. Why? Because you stop attaching conditions to your peace. You stop giving your emotional stability away every time someone doesn't meet your inner checklist. And suddenly, you're not as easily bothered. You're not as easily shaken. Letting go of expectations doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling. You learn to appreciate what people do offer instead of obsessing over what they didn't. It's a shift from entitlement to gratitude, from control to trust, and from constant disappointment to consistent peace. In every situation, there's a split second, a tiny, powerful gap between what happens and how you choose to respond. That gap is where your freedom lies. That's where peace, wisdom, and emotional control are born. Most people live in reaction mode. Something happens, someone says something, and they instantly react without thinking, without processing. It's automatic, it's emotional, and often it makes things worse. But what if you could train yourself to slow that down? Pausing is not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's emotional intelligence in motion. When you pause before reacting, you create space between the trigger and your response. And in that space, you give yourself time to assess, is this really about me? Is this worth getting upset over? What's the most peaceful and powerful way to handle this? That tiny moment can change everything. Let's say someone insults you. Your instinct might be to snap back, defend yourself, prove them wrong. But if you pause, even just for a few seconds, you give yourself a chance to decide, do I really want to match their energy? Or do I want to rise above it? The pause gives you control. It lets you stay grounded, because not every comment deserves your attention. Not every argument needs your involvement, and not every emotional impulse needs to be acted on. This is where response over reaction comes in. A reaction is fast, emotional, and often fueled by ego. A response is thoughtful, deliberate, and aligned with your values. You're no longer acting from a place of wounded pride. You're acting from a place of clarity and calm. Over time, this practice rewires your brain. It strengthens your self-awareness and self-regulation. You stop living on edge, ready to explode at every offense, and instead become someone who can navigate conflict with grace. You become less reactive and more reflective. Think of yourself as a thermostat, not a thermometer. A thermometer simply reacts to the environment, but a thermostat sets the tone. When you pause before reacting, you become the one who sets the emotional tone, not just for yourself, but often for everyone around you. So, in moments of tension or discomfort, don't rush to react. Breathe. Observe.
Wait.
Even just a few seconds can turn a potential conflict into an opportunity for growth and maturity. One of the greatest sources of inner turmoil is resistance, not to hardship itself, but to the fact that hardship is happening. We spend so much mental and emotional energy wishing things were different, hoping people would change, or trying to reverse what's already been done. But reality doesn't bend to our wishes. It simply is. Acceptance doesn't mean you're okay with everything that happens. It doesn't mean you approve of someone's behavior or agree with the pain you're going through. It means you recognize one essential truth: what is already is. No amount of anger, denial, or frustration will unmake the present moment. Resisting it only multiplies your suffering. Imagine you're caught in the rain with no umbrella. You can curse the sky, get frustrated with the weather, blame yourself for forgetting your jacket, or you can accept that it's raining and deal with it. Acceptance doesn't change the weather, but it changes your experience of it. Suddenly, you're not emotionally drenched. You're just wet. And there's a difference. This principle applies everywhere. You expected support from a friend and they let you down. It hurts. You can resist it, replay it, stew in it, build resentment, or you can acknowledge what happened and move forward with clarity. Maybe you redefine boundaries. Maybe you adjust your expectations, but you no longer drain yourself trying to rewrite the past. When you resist reality, you argue with the present, and you always lose. Acceptance is not surrender, it's strategy. It's choosing to respond to life as it is, not as you wish it would be. From that place of truth, you make better decisions. You reclaim your power. And here's the paradox. Once you stop fighting the moment, you gain control over how to meet it. Instead of being a victim to circumstances or people's actions, you step into ownership of your emotions. You stop reacting to the chaos outside and start choosing peace inside. In relationships, this is especially powerful. Maybe someone is never going to be the kind of person you hoped they would be. You can keep resisting that, trying to change them, trying to force them to see your value. Or you can accept who they are and decide from a place of strength whether to stay, adjust, or walk away. Acceptance opens the door to peace because it removes the mental warfare of, this shouldn't be happening. It is happening. Now what? That, no what, is where your real power begins. Because once you stop resisting, you start responding with clarity, calm, and intention. There comes a time in your personal growth when you realize that not every battle is worth fighting and not every insult is worth addressing. That moment is when you begin to prioritize your energy over your ego. The ego is the part of us that craves validation, recognition, and control. It's the voice in your head that says, they can't talk to me like that, or I need to prove I'm right. It's constantly seeking to defend your identity, to win arguments, to be seen as strong, smart, superior. But here's the cost. The more you cater to your ego, the more peace you sacrifice. Think about how much energy is spent trying to win meaningless debates, correcting someone just to feel superior, or holding on to grudges just to make a point. These aren't acts of strength. They're symptoms of ego needing to be fed. And the truth is, feeding the ego is like trying to fill a cup with no bottom. It's never satisfied. You might win the argument, but lose your peace. You might get the last word, but stay angry for hours. Now imagine this instead. Someone says something rude or condescending, and you feel the familiar rise of your ego wanting to clap back. But instead, you pause, smile inwardly, and walk away, not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to protect your energy. That's real power. That's emotional maturity. Your peace is a precious resource. If you spend it on every insult, every disagreement, every need to prove yourself, you'll constantly be drained. But when you choose to preserve your energy, you become selective about what deserves your reaction. You start to see that not everything that triggers your ego deserves your attention. This doesn't mean you suppress your voice or let people walk over you. It means you learn the difference between responding from power and reacting from pride. It means asking yourself in the moment, will engaging with this actually serve me? Is this about principle or just my pride? What's more valuable right now, being right or being at peace? Most of the time, the answer is peace. When you prioritize your energy, you start to develop a new kind of strength, one that isn't loud or defensive, but grounded and wise. You realize you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to match every low frequency with your own. You don't have to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. And that's where your freedom begins, not in dominating others, but in mastering yourself. When the ego is quiet, the soul can speak, and that voice will always lead you back to calm, clarity, and true strength. Judgment is quick. It's reactive. It's that immediate voice in your head that says, they're rude. A's selfish. She's fake. Before you even pause to consider the why behind someone's behavior, it makes us feel superior for a moment. But what it really does is build walls. Walls between us and others, and even between us and our own peace. Here's the thing: when you judge someone, you stop being curious about their story. You write them off with a label: toxic, lazy, arrogant, disrespectful, without really knowing what's beneath the surface. But every person is the product of their experiences, their struggles, their upbringing, and their beliefs. And while that doesn't excuse poor behavior, it does explain a lot of it. Choosing to understand doesn't mean justifying or tolerating hurtful actions. It means pausing long enough to say, there's probably more going on here than I can see. That simple shift pulls you out of anger and into awareness. It softens the edge of irritation and replaces it with empathy, or at least neutrality. For example, imagine someone cuts in front of you in line. Your instinct might be to think, what a jerk! But what if they're rushing to get medicine for their sick child? Or they just lost someone and their mind is elsewhere? You may never know the reason, but choosing to consider one instead of jumping straight to judgment changes how you feel. And that matters. Judgment is rooted in assumption. Understanding is rooted in humility. It says, I don't have all the facts. I don't know what this person is carrying. That kind of thinking creates space for compassion, for patience, and for peace within yourself. It also transforms your relationships. When you replace judgment with curiosity, conversations become deeper. Conflicts become opportunities. You stop reacting to surface behavior and start noticing what's underneath it. Maybe the friend who's distant is dealing with something she doesn't know how to talk about. Maybe the coworker who snapped at you is overwhelmed and scared he's failing. Maybe the stranger who was cold to you has nothing left to give. And even when someone's behavior truly is negative, understanding it helps you deal with it more effectively. You can set boundaries without bitterness. You can walk away without resentment because you're not acting from a place of moral superiority. You're acting from emotional clarity. Choosing understanding over judgment doesn't mean being naive. It means being wise enough to see that life is complex and people are rarely just good or bad. It means protecting your peace by not getting tangled in assumptions and mental stories that only fuel negativity. And the more you practice it, the more you realize judgment separates, but understanding connects. And connection, even quiet internal connection, is what brings calm. When you choose to understand, you step out of ego and into empathy, and that shift alone can dissolve so much unnecessary anger. One of the most exhausting and ultimately hopeless habits we fall into is trying to control how other people think, feel, or act. We want them to understand our point of view. We want them to behave in a way that aligns with our expectations. We want them to be more thoughtful, kinder, more responsible, more self-aware. And when they're not, we get frustrated. We take it personally. We feel powerless, irritated, sometimes even angry. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You will never have full control over another human being. Not your partner, not your child, not your friend, not your coworker, not a stranger on the street. People will always be driven by their own filters, their own programming, and their own sense of timing. And the more you try to mold them, push them, or force them to change for your comfort, the more resistance and suffering you create. Trying to control others often comes from a good place. Maybe you want someone to avoid pain. Maybe you want the relationship to work. Maybe you just want to feel safe. But the reality is, no matter how good your intentions are, control is rooted in fear, and fear never brings peace. The moment you let go of that need to control others, you create space. Not just for them to be who they are, but for you to be free. You stop monitoring every word they say. You stop analyzing every choice they make. You stop trying to steer their emotional ship and start sailing your own. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you don't express your needs or set clear boundaries. It means you release the illusion that you are responsible for other people's decisions, growth, or emotional regulation. You give up the exhausting role of being the emotional manager of everyone around you. And there's so much peace in that. When you detach from control, you realize that people will evolve, or not, at their own pace. You can influence, but you cannot enforce. You can inspire, but you cannot impose. You can share your truth, but you cannot guarantee how it will be received. Ironically, detachment often leads to deeper connection. Why? Because people feel safer when they're not being manipulated, micromanaged, or coerced. They're more open when they're not being judged. And even if the relationship doesn't shift the way you hoped, you stay grounded because your peace isn't tethered to their behavior anymore. When you truly embrace this mindset, something beautiful happens. You shift your energy inward. Instead of obsessing over what others are doing wrong, you focus on your own growth, your own alignment, your own reactions. And that's where real transformation happens. Freedom doesn't come from changing everyone around you. It comes from no longer needing to. From being okay when they're not okay. From loving without controlling. From standing in your own center while the rest of the world moves as it will. When inner peace becomes your true north, your non-negotiable standard, everything in your life begins to shift. Your choices shift. Your reactions shift. Your boundaries, your conversations, your habits, your goals, they all begin to revolve around one quiet but powerful question. Will this protect or disturb my peace? Because the truth is, most people don't consciously prioritize peace. They prioritize being right, or being liked, or being impressive, successful, admired, understood, validated. And yet, even when they achieve all those things, something still feels off inside. That calm they're chasing never quite arrives, because peace doesn't come from the outside. It never has. Inner peace is a practice. It's not a one-time achievement you unlock like a level in a game. It's a moment-to-moment decision to come back to center, to choose clarity over chaos, to choose calm over ego, to choose alignment over approval. Making peace your priority means that you become selective, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You don't engage in drama just to prove a point. You don't hold onto bitterness just to feel justified. You don't overextend yourself trying to please people who aren't even tuned into your well-being. You start saying no with confidence and yes with intention. It also means that you start listening more carefully to your inner world. You become aware of what unsettles you and what nourishes you. You recognize when a conversation feels heavy, when a situation feels toxic, when a thought pattern starts pulling you into old cycles of anger or stress, and instead of fighting it or indulging it, you pause and realign. When peace is your priority, you stop giving away your emotional power so freely. Someone can be rude and you don't automatically absorb it. Someone can disagree with you and it doesn't feel like a personal attack. Someone can walk away from your life, and while it may hurt, it doesn't shatter you because your peace was never built on their presence. This doesn't make you passive or detached. In fact, it makes you more present, more intentional, more alive. You start to understand that true strength is quiet. It's the ability to walk away from chaos without needing to declare victory. It's the power to remain grounded when everything around you is trying to pull you into reaction. And the most beautiful part? When you start prioritizing peace, you become a source of it. You start radiating calm. People feel safer around you. Conversations become smoother. Conflicts de-escalate quicker. Why? Because your energy no longer feeds the fire. It softens it. You realize that protecting your peace is not selfish. It's sacred. Because from that place of peace, you think better, speak better, live better. And in a world that often glorifies hustle, noise, and reaction, peace becomes your quiet rebellion. So in a world that will always have noise, conflict, and unpredictability, you get to choose how you move through it. You get to choose whether to be reactive or responsive, whether to be consumed by ego or anchored in peace. The people around you may not change. The challenges may not disappear, but you can change the way you show up for yourself. You're not here to control others. You're not here to win every argument. You're not here to carry the weight of what others think, say, or do. You're here to protect your peace, to nurture your energy, and to walk through life with grace, clarity, and emotional freedom. When you master your inner world, the outer world loses its power over you. That's not just emotional intelligence, that's liberation. And remember this, your calm is your strength. Your ability to stay centered when everything around you is pulling you in 100 directions. That's your superpower. So choose peace, not just sometimes, not just when it's easy, but as a way of life. Because when you stop letting people disturb your mind, you start discovering just how powerful your soul truly is.